Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same. Welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. My name is Jen Chambers, and today's episode is called The Tube Sock Killings, Blood in the Timber. We talk here on Same Crime, Different Time about where the past of the Pacific Northwest whispers chilling tales to us of true crime and beyond. Tonight we're going deep into the upper left of the United States, to the woods near Mineral, Washington, where in 1985, 4 people were murdered, possibly 6, and a tube sock was tied around 2 of the victims' necks, which sparked the nickname the Tube Sock Killings. This is unsolved, it's eerie, and it left families without answers. Let's unravel as much as we can today. It all began on August 10th, 1985. A man named Stephen Harkins, who was 27, and his girlfriend, Ruth Cooper, who was 42, left Tacoma, Washington, where they lived, for a weekend at Tule Lake. They never returned. 4 days later, hikers found Stephen, who was dead in his sleeping bag and had been shot in the head. Nearby lay their dog, who was also shot. But Ruth was missing. The mystery had begun. Months later, after a lot of searching, on October 26th of 1985, a skull was found near Hearts Lake. 2 days later, Ruth's body and purse were removed, and a tube sock was found tied around her neck. She was proven to have died from quote-unquote homicidal violence, and there was a gunshot in her belly. The autopsy showed that she died of that violence and the gunshot. But the sock could have been a ritual or a red herring. They weren't sure. But one odd related thing was that another couple, who were named Kimberly Diane Levine and Edward Smith, had been found dead in a gravel pit on the banks of the Columbia River in March of 1985. It could be unrelated, or it could be connected. They didn't know. But then on December 12th, 1985, just 4 months later, a man named Mike Reamer, who was 36, and his girlfriend Diana Robertson, who was age 21, as well as their 2-year-old daughter Crystal, vanished while camping nearby in the woods. They'd planned to camp in the hills to cut down a Christmas tree, and Mike Renner also wanted to check on some animal traps that he had set up near the area. But this is so weird. Crystal, their daughter, who was 2, was found by herself, alone, outside of a Kmart in a town called Spanaway, which is about 40 miles north of where they were camping. She was just found all alone, walking around outside the Kmart. When she was asked about her mother, she said, "Mommy is out in the trees." She wasn't really verbal enough to add more than that. Now, Crystal was given into the custody of the state until a couple of days after she was found. I think it was 3 days. And this is crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine. Her maternal grandmother saw her photo on the news and was able to go and claim her. So thank goodness she had family who could come get her. But I can't imagine getting that news on watching the news. That's horrible. It didn't happen until much later, 2 months later, on February 18th, 1986, that Diana's body was discovered. It was near State Route 7. She'd been stabbed 17 times. She had been found nude from the waist up, and there was a tube sock tied around her neck. It was interesting. Her body was found by a hunter, and then the search for the truck or more evidence nearby was hindered that day by a huge 6-inch snowfall. The next day, the truck was found close by to her body. And weirdly, the dashboard had a note in a manila envelope on the dashboard that read, "I love you, Diana." And that was believed to be in Mike's handwriting. But Mike was missing. There were all sorts of theories about Mike. He was suspected by some as maybe the murderer of all the rest of those people in the area, and other people thought maybe he was a victim too. They just weren't sure. The working theory was that maybe he killed Diana for one unknown reason or another, and then maybe dropped off Crystal before he ran away because maybe she slowed him down. There was more speculation on Mike when an article ran in October of in October the previous year. They'd found it when they were investigating. The article talked about domestic violence on behalf of Mike. But the couple was known to have gotten back together by December of 1985, so much before they were to have disappeared. And Mike's bosses at the roof company where he worked when they were interviewed said he was a work hard, play hard kind of guy. They didn't have a lot of complaints about him. But all that being said, Mike did not have the cleanest history with Diana. There was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries that ran a show about the case, and her sister is quoted as saying, quote, "He beat her up. He took everything out on her. He blamed her for things that he did. If he was seeing somebody else, he would turn it around like Diana was seeing somebody else and justify it in his own mind." So nobody knew what to think. And then investigators pursued so many leads, but mostly why 2 individual tube socks? Was it the same killer? Was it the same pair of socks? And there was some people who linked it to Mike Rainier. There was that domestic abuse history, and also he owned a .22 caliber gun, which matched the ballistic evidence that they'd found in the case. And then the note in the truck was super suspect. The big thing, though, was that there were bloodstains found on Mike's truck seat. So the authorities didn't rule him out. But his father, Mike's father, who was a retired game warden, insisted that Mike was very savvy in the outdoors and he could fend for himself in the woods. Alternative theories kept rolling in. There were a bunch of serial killers in the area, as we've talked about. There was high time for serial killers all over the West Coast. There was a man named Billy Ray Ballard Jr., who had been convicted of a similar crime in March of 1985. So he was considered, but there were some subtle differences that kept him from being charged. There was also a serial killer named Gerald Pizzuto, who was a serial killer in Washington and in Idaho around that time. He was a suspect too, but they haven't found evidence connecting him just yet. A man named Detective Pat Bell of Lewis County remains unconvinced that all of these victims were linked. He said the two tube socks could be coincidence, for instance. There's still a lot of suspicion, but he thought it might be a copycat killer or something like that. This case did grab a ton of national attention at the time. It's funny to think the internet, of course, didn't exist then, but it was featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 1989. And it's still covered by a lot of true crime podcasts like this one, like Weeknight Mysteries and Cosmic Bigfoot, as well as Unsolved Mysteries itself. They have their own podcast. So it's nice that there's being, people are recommitting to trying to figure this out. And there was some clues a little bit later in 2011. A skull was found and was confirmed via dental records to belong to Mike Rainier. And it was found about a mile away from where they found his wife's body. But it didn't yield any cause of death. And whether it's natural decomp that just foils all attempts to find out more about his killer or foul play, there's so many questions that remain. The authorities were able to rule out a gunshot to the head as a cause of death, so that's all they know for now. And what we have here is a remote forest and minimal witnesses, right? Because they're out in the middle of nowhere. All these victims were removed from civil life. Like, terrain like that just hides everything. Killers can hide in plain sight, or things like that, disasters just remain undiscovered, or all of the clues just deteriorate because of where we're at. I mean, this whole idea of the tube sock, whether it's connected or not, it amplifies fear because it's such an everyday thing. But it also maybe speaks to the fact that maybe we want to connect the dots, even if there aren't any. It could just be separate killings by separate people. The tube sock killings of Mineral, Washington remain unsolved to this day. Stephen and Ruth, Diana and Mike all vanished into the Pacific Northwest forest. And to say nothing of the couple who was found at the rock quarry, Kimberly Diane Levine and Edward Smith. The truth about all of their cases is probably at the bottom of some of those trees. If you know anything, even a small detail from 1985 or 1986, please reach out to the Lewis County Sheriff's Cold Case Task Force or email me at scdtpod@gmail.com. Let's help carry those voices forward. It's such a sad case. I'm Jen Chambers, and this was Same Crime, Different Time. Until next time, listen closely to the spaces between the trees, and take care of yourself.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com or www.jennifer-chambers.com.